Hey guys, NanMan here, and we're back with another modern meta breakdown, if you will. We've been doing it now for 2 weeks. This is our third week, and I'm going to be heading up to PAX this weekend, so I wanted to make sure I got the video in and recorded and posted up so you guys can be able to enjoy it for those that might be playing in events over this weekend and getting a little bit of insight. And I initially was like, okay, cool, we know we're going to do Death Shadow, we know we're going to do Jund, we're going to do Abzan, then we're going to go into the prison decks because those also place highly at some of our events with like Lantern Control, the red-white prison decks, or Nahiri Control red-white style. And so I decided to ask you guys what you wanted to see as our next segment for our modern meta breakdown. And we did have somebody up on YouTube. Chris here was saying maybe a video on backdoor combo decks like Abzan Company, Jeskai Nahiri-ish, and Kiki Chord. So we are going to save the Jeskai Nahiri and save that for our control segment, but we're going to talk about Abzan Company and we're going to talk about Kiki Chord tonight because I think those would be good ones to discuss. Now there are a lot of variants on these different decks, so awesome, Chris, for giving a suggestion for us, and we'll make sure that we get some discussion going. Now for everybody else watching at home, make sure you guys let me know what other videos you'd like to see, what other decks that you were interested in learning a little bit about, because the meta is very diverse right now. So let's slide over, talk a little bit about some Abzan Company. So Abzan Company is one of the decks that was quite popular about a year ago, and then fell off. And it fell off because of the rise of Dredge, and with people running more Graveyard Hate in their sideboards, it made their main deck just kind of weaker, and the deck revolves around these graveyard synergies and interactions. There's the main components of it like you would expect to see with a lot of decks, but it has those flex spots, and a lot more flex spots available to it in the creature side of things, because it is a toolbox deck, which means that you have basically a lot of these single tin creatures that you can be able to pull out and kind of have a big impact on the state of the game. So let's talk a little bit about what the deck's trying to do real quick. So there is basically two main creatures that we're going to revolve around to get our combo going, and that's going to be Melira, the anti-poison there, so nice little fun of. We see some elf players run her, of course, is a staple in the Abzan Company list, because your creatures can't get -1/-1 counters. Works really well with that Persist, which we'll talk about soon. Anafenza essentially does the same thing. 2 white does the bolster, so whenever a creature, and it has to be a non-token creature, so your token generations do not factor into this. So bolsters for 1, so you get to put a +1 counter on the lowest toughness creature. If 2 creatures are tied for it, you get to decide which one gets the counter on it. So it revolves on having one of those in play. Then you decide to get out Kitchen Finks, 3/2 for 3. When it enters the battlefield, gain 2 life. Persist, of course. When he dies, comes back with a -1/-1 counter. So if you have Anafenza or Melira, it basically counteracts that. So how is this guy going to die? How is he going to come back, kind of thing? Well, we're going to be using our Viscera Seer here. Sack a creature, scry 1. So you essentially, if you have Melira or Anafenza out, Viscera Seer, and your Kitchen Finks, all you need are 3 creatures to make this work. You can gain infinite life. You have to set a number, though. You'll sit there, okay, I'm going to do this infinite amount of times. Sometimes some players will scoop against you once you're like, all right, I've assembled the combo, and I'm going to start going off, and I'm going to scry through my deck and find the card that I need. So you just look at the top card, cool, bottom, 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 bottom. Once you find a card, you'll say, okay, I'm going to continue to sack him and scry and keep this on the top, and I'm going to do this until I have 1,000,000 life or 100,000 life, whatever number you want. So that is one of the things you can do. It also has a essentially infinite damage, basically doing the same thing, but you use Murderous Redcap, who, when he enters the battlefield, deals damage to a creature or player equal to his power. So that is a nice little interaction you can do. Some lists have stopped running him, some do like it, so that's one of our flex spots that could potentially be available to us. Let's talk a little bit about the ramp here. The decks are all about having quick access to Collected Company and Court of Calling. So We do see, of course, Birds of Paradise is in here. Noble Hierarch is also in there. You're going to have that kind of 7, more or less, for that number. We also see Wall of Roots in there. And 2 is kind of the go-to that you're expecting to see. Not only is he a blocker, he's 0-5, but also can generate mana. And basically pulls double duty with your Chord of Calling, because you can convoke him and tap him for the convoke and generate a green mana off it. So it basically counts 2 towards Chord of Calling. So that lets you find one of those specific combo pieces or one of your silver bullets. So very effective. Collected Company, of course, look at your top 6, pick out 2 creatures, and they enter the battlefield. One of our newest addition to the decks, and some decks have gone more in this favor, which is the Renegade Rallier. And 3/2 with Revolt, of course, from Aether Revolt there. When he enters the battlefield, if a permanent left the battlefield this turn, you get to put a permanent with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard onto the battlefield. So that counts towards your lands, if you have fetch lands or anything like that. Also factors into any of your combo pieces like Anafenza, Malira, also your Viscera Seer. Those can come back that way. Doesn't catch any of your Kitchen Finxes or anything like that, but could have some factor into it. So that's a way to get pieces back. Eternal Witness, also a way to get some pieces back, because you can get, of course, target card from your graveyard, add it to your hand. So those are nice little kind of assistant cards there. Then we have a couple additional stuff, variants, basically on how you want to play. Here's a lot more of the flex spots available. I think if you're going to run Abzan Company, you need to run Renegade Rallier in there. 1 to 2 is kind of a really good set. You can go more if you're going like the Seraph route. I don't happen to have that card with me right now. But you can basically have a combo going with those 3 to get infinite scries. Don't gain the life off of it, but it is a whole nother thing that we're going to talk about at another stage there. So, but some of our kind of flex spots: Pride Mage, solid card, got the Exalted, can destroy an artifact or an enchantment. So if people have some main board hate against you, can be very beneficial there. Orzhov Pontiff can pump your team, can wipe your opponent's board, depending on how things go. Just a nice little useful card in here. Again, those kind of silver bullets that we're talking about. Scavenging Ooze can be a beater here. Has that ability to exile your opponent's creatures, so has that, has the ability to exile cards from your opponent's graveyard, so has that interaction against certain decks in the main board there. Courser of Kruphix, another kind of solid flex spot available to it. 2/4, gain life when you play a land, and you play with the top card of your library revealed. Spellskite's also in here as like a little bit of protection. So that's our main board package that you'd expect to see. Abzan Company always needs to run 4 Chord, 4 Collected Company. He's opted for the Abrupt Decay in his list. Fine. You know, I personally had mine in the sideboard to allow me to have an extra setup of another spell or another creature kind of thing. I don't remember exactly what my last spot was for that. So sideboard is kind of the go-to. Again, lots of 1 and 2 ofs you see here. Because it is that silver bullet style, you can be able to pick and choose. You know, Kataki's in here, Anafenza's in here. We see some Tireless Tracker, which are some creatures that we're seeing included in some people's main board as a nice little fun thing to do. Sin Collector, again, that depending on how the meta is, you might have that main, you might have it side. Reclamation Sage is kind of always a good one to add into the list here, because destroy artifact or enchantment. Pride Mage, again, additional ones. Firewalkers, depending on how your meta is shaped up to be. Then you've got some removal that's set up here in Disruption, like Path to Exile and Thoughtseize. So lots of different cards available to you if you're going to be playing that Abzan Company route, which is a really cool route to go if you like creature-based decks and you like being able to have a combo in there. That's fun. So that is a cool strategy to go for. There are a couple variants of it, and when we do our video that talks about basically like Bant Company or like the Knight of Reliquary style, we'll also talk about the other list of Abzan Company that's running around. Has a way to sack all your creatures kind of thing, and you can kill somebody using Blood Artist with that. So it does have that extra outlet, not just reliant on the kind of tried and true just Kitchen Finks and just Murderous Redcap. That list does not run Redcap usually, so we'll talk more about that at a later date. But did want to highlight it a little bit in this video. So sliding over Kiki, it's not a deck that sees a lot of play. There is somebody that does play it quite a bit when he plays Modern, so I made sure to pull up his list, and he did get 10th place at the Classic in February on the 19th there. This is kind of the more go-to list that you're going to expect to see. Pull it down a little bit so you can see all the different lands. This is another Silver Bullet style deck, very creature oriented. Does not run the Collected Company in this because most of the creatures that you're going to be trying to find off there are going to be bigger than that. Kiki costs more, Restoration costs more, so, and his list is actually running Pia and Kira and Emrakul in his. Runs 4 Chord, 4 Path in here. Same kind of concept in a way that you're going to ramp up. Hey, I've got the birds, cool. Got some Wall of Roots in here, got that action, but 4-color deck. Does have access to, again, those Silver Bullets that we were talking about. Running Spell Queller in his list for that sort of interaction, 4 or less, counter aspect, Scavenging Ooze. Restoration Kiki Jiki is one combo that he can make where he can make essentially infinite angels and swing in and kill you that way. He has opted for the Nahiri as well in there, so he could sit there with a Nahiri and go, well, I can Nahiri and rummage away cards that are useless, draw some stuff, have some draw power. I've got ways to exile an artifact, or enchantment. So if you're running some Grafdigger's Cages or something like that, I can shut that down. And then, of course, we talked about how we can find Emrakul with her ult, or if you happen to have a Restoration Angel out, you can always find Kiki Jiki and kill somebody that way. So you can not only find your combo piece with him, but you can also just kill people with Emrakul, which is kind of a interesting route to go if you want to play a Chord deck. It's a not as low to the ground as the Abzan Company, and not as focused on the combo. As you can see, it can just be like, well, I could make a bunch of angels and kill you that way. Or I can sit here and beat you down with a bunch of Voice of Resurgence. I've got P and Kira. And, I'm going to follow it up with a Nahiri here for backup. And if need be, I've got these paths that I can use on you, do that sort of action. We see Glenn or Ladra was in Hoogland's list. It's a solid one. Again, 4 cost here. But you can be able to counter some spells that way, and then it does have the Persist. But doesn't opt for that gain infinite life kind of aspect of it. Doesn't need it. Now, a fun of that Hoogland is running. Mirror Superior here, 2 costs, a 5/6. That's a beater right there. I mean, when you think about like a lot of the Tron Eldrazi's that are running around, like 4/4, 5/5s, things like that, are usually the top ends. So having that guy there, pretty sweet. Also, if you're running into like Death Shadow, Goyfs, stuff like that, he's a pretty good wall. But only way that you can cast him is if you're spending mana produced by creatures. So your Birds of Paradise there, your Wall of Roots there, unless you Chord for him. But most of the time you're not going to want to do that because you only have 4 in the deck. You're going to want to find one of your other more beneficial things at that point in time. Unless you're really getting hit by the beatdown path, and that's kind of the best way to shut down an aggressive player like that. So sideboard again is kind of Silver Bullets, those one-ofs that you're expecting to see. Hey, Forge Tenders in here, Fulminators in here, Rex Sages in here, another Skoos. There's also one in the main, Thragtusk, Courser of Krufix, Eidolon, because there are those Storm decks that are running around, and we can talk about those in the future as well, because there's essentially 2 Storm decks running around Modern right now. Does have access to things like Lightning Helix and Unified Will here, so can go a control-y route, which is nice. That you can just kind of go, all right, I'll shave down on some of these creatures here, and now we can go with Unified Will, Lightning Helix, where you notice with Abzan Company can't have as many additional instances of sorceries because of Collected Company. So that is an aspect that it does have to be aware of for this list. Now, Engineer Explosive, again, any list that is running at least 3 colors, this is a good addition for you to add in here. Linvala, a nice little one because activated abilities for creature opponent control can't be activated. So if you're playing like an Abzan Company list or something like that, hey, they can't sack things. So that's pretty sweet. So that's kind of a rundown of what to expect with these 2 different Chord decks, like these creature-based combo decks, if you will, that are running around. Like I said, there are a couple variants of the list because there are so many flex spots available to you, so you guys can sit there and tweak your list how you want, but you have to be aware that Graftic Arcades shuts down both of these decks because they won't be able to find stuff with Chord of Calling or Collected Company. Pithing Needle, very important as well for both of these lists, because you can say, all right, Nahiri, gonna shut that down. Against the Abzan Company, you can say, well, I'm gonna shut down your sack outlet, Viscera Seer. Cool. Now you're not gonna be able to gain infinite life, deal infinite damage. So those are specific sideboard cards that you guys might be needing to consider if this is starting to pop up more in your meta. Now, Kiki Chord is around. You will see it if you go to some of these bigger events. Not as common as the Abzan Company, so just something to keep in mind going forward there. So that is the kind of rundown of the 2 decks. Did wanted to spend my time in talking about those a little bit here. Like I said, I'm about to be going to PAX. I'll be there this weekend. Didn't want to spend too much time going over all the different Abzan variants, because we can spend that in another episode when we talk about kind of the Naya stuff and like the Knight and Core Helm stuff that can go on there. So if you guys enjoyed this video, I do appreciate the support you guys have been giving me for all the Magic content that I've been producing. Make sure you're hitting the subscribes, the follows, all that kind of good stuff across the board. Again, we have Modern Magic Mondays live every Monday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch, and the rebroadcast is on Wednesday over on YouTube. Also, all the VODs are over on YouTube, and of course, that's Modern Magic Monday stuff. We did a podcast for those that missed it. All of us from the Modern Magic Mondays team talking about Modern Masters 2017, talking about the spoilers, talking about kind of what to expect going forward with that stuff. So make sure you guys check that out. It's also on SoundCloud. We're trying to get it on iTunes. So again, the continued support is amazing. If there's other decks that you'd like to see for next week, let me know. You know, I really appreciate your guys' discussions going on about what the decks are, maybe some input about what decks you're playing, all that kind of good stuff. But that's going to do it for me here tonight, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next game.